Very good morning. I bring in warm greetings from Apollo Hospital, Greens Road, Chennai. I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to present this topic on diet in post-renal transplant, short and long-term course. Uh, Post-renal transplant is very important because it provides best outcome for end-stage renal disease patients, providing quality of life and reduced risk of morbidity and mortality as compared to dialysis. Recovery and long-term success depends a lot on proper nutrition. Healthy eating supports the immune system and kidney function. Nutritional challenges do exist from time to time, and proper planning, monitoring, and reevaluating the nutritional status form important aspect of patient care, and it is often neglected area, and nutritional role in transplant cannot be undermined. The nutritional journey is divided into 4 phases based on the nutritional challenges and the nutritional goals, starting from pre-transplant era itself to the 4 phases of acute recovery phase, intermediate phase, and the long-term phase. In the pre-transplant phase, there is an increased concentration of managing the comorbidities, anemia management, macro and micronutrients needs to be managed, fluid restriction has to be taken into account, and we need to maintain a positive nitrogen balance so that the body is prepared for transplant, and also we need to manage the dialysis protein loss effectively. So there's a transition from a pre-transplant phase to an acute recovery phase of say 0 to 6 weeks, where the focus is shifted because of the increased nutritional demand, need to good wound healing, and also to tide over the crisis of the surgical stress. Also the gut dysbiosis, which is caused by the mycophenolate mofetil group of drugs, immunosuppressive drug interaction related complications, especially dysglycemia, the management for hypophosphatemia and hypomagnesemia that is associated with these drugs, risk of infections and delayed graft functions, that all leads to need for a high protein and a calorie dense diet in the acute phase. And also it has to be seen that the transition has to be very soft, because the patient is quite used to a fluid restricted, sodium restricted phase, and suddenly when the fluid becomes liberal and sodium restriction and potassium restriction is taken away, it is very difficult for the patient to get adjusted. So always go slow from a clear liquids to a semi-solid diet to a full-fledged diet in the acute recovery phase. And there is a transition to a moderate phase of 6 weeks to 6 months, where the focus is on metabolic vigilance, where we need to manage the new onset diabetes, hypertension, and dyslipidemia like factors, and need to stabilize the graft. And last phase is the long-term maintenance phase of 6 months, where again the focus is on maintaining the cardiovascular risk factors and minimizing the cancer risk and other long-term complication, and also to modify the bone and muscle health. So in the pre-transplant period, it is very important to identify all the risk factors, including the malnutrition and the obesity. Creatine is a good marker of muscle mass as compared to body mass index, and the creatine level should be maintained around 5 to 6 pre-dialysis to ensure that there is no malnutrition. MIA scores of more than 8 to 10 is considered as a bad prognostic factor. Also, albumin levels less than 3.5 is associated with bad outcomes. So the concentration should be on a high calorie protein intake of should be 1.2 to 1.4 gram per kg of body weight per day according to the type of dialysis. And avoid the sodium and the potassium load. Keep the cholesterol between 150 to 180 milligram percent, because low cholesterol is associated with again bad outcomes, and a marker for protein energy malnutrition. And keep the gut healthy by increasing the fiber intake, and keep the goals in check, especially the anemia goals, and the albumin should be kept above 4 gram percent. So the concentration should be in the pre-transplant period to increase in the lean protein diet, make the fruits and vegetables to be boiled and leached out to decrease the potassium load, and go for a whole grain complex carbohydrate diet with low glycemic index. Avoid the sugary agents, avoid the sodium load, potassium load, and also avoid overhydration for a smooth surgical outcome. Nutrition assessment should start in the pre-transplant time itself with a good medical history, looking into all the comorbidities and risk factors, looking for malnutrition and obesity risk factors, examination, and identify the nutritional risk. Lab parameters, especially pre-albumin, albumin, serum cholesterol levels, and creatine has to be checked. Also, we can look into kinetic models like protein catabolic rate and the protein equivalent of nitrogen appearance, which Dr. Sampath was mentioning earlier, and also to focus on protein body mass index, mass composition, to look into the lean mass and the muscle mass has to be looked into. So coming to the acute post-transplant phase, where the goals are good recovery and wound healing and early mobilization of the patient, and also to address the anemia, hypophosphatemia, dysglycemia, which is caused because of the increased surgical stress, steroids, and the immunosuppressive drugs. And also to prevent the weight gain. It is important to go for a high protein and high calorie dense diet. It is sometimes important to give IV albumin also to maintain the targets. The fat should be less than 30%, 10% should be saturated fats, 10% should be polyunsaturated fats, and 20% should be monounsaturated fats. Frequent glucose monitoring is imperative because to tackle the increased hyperglycemia which is associated with the steroids and the immunosuppressive drugs. Also supplement a good amount of vitamin D and phosphorus, and fluid and sodium should be customized according to the patient need. And coming to the maintenance phase, where the graft is now settling and there is a need to modify the cardiovascular risk, management of new onset diabetes, hypertension, and dyslipidemia, and to decrease the metabolic load on the new kidney, again the protein restriction is required, 2.8 to 1 gram per kg per day. Calorie and carbohydrate restriction again is required. Sodium and potassium should also be curtailed. Calcium should be around 1 gram per day. Phosphorus should be 1.5 gram per day to be kept to maintain the tissue health, and crude fiber should be 25 to 30 grams per day. So if the patient is again going into the failing graft phase, it should be exactly managed like a chronic kidney disease. So further protein restriction to 0.5 to 0.6 gram per kg should be there. Sometimes ketone analogs can be added. Calorie and carbohydrates again should be restricted. Fat should be restricted to 25 to 30%. Saturated fat should be less than 7%. Iron requirement should be adequately met. Calcium load should be avoided to prevent atherosclerosis. Phosphorus should be around 1 gram per day, and sodium and potassium restriction is imperative. Coming to the macronutrients per se, choose your protein well between the animal and the vegetable protein. The animal sources are the meat, which has to be cooked actually. Nothing raw should be taken in the post-transplant period. Milk should be adequately pasteurized, and cheese should be hard cheese and not the soft cheese because of the moisture content, and they are less acidic. There's an increased risk of infection of the E. coli. So the soft cheese has to be avoided, and you can go for a Parmesan or a cheddar type of cheese. The plant products are the tofu, the walnuts, and seeds. Keep the eggs to 3 to 4 yolks per week, and the high quality plant protein comes from the kidney beans, chickpea, and peanut butters. Portion control is also important. Limit your red meats, and fish and seafood and legumes should be restricted to 2 to 3 times per day, and restrict your processed meats. Coming to the carbohydrates, regulate your refined products, avoid the white bread, maida products, sugar snacks and sweets, and always look into the labels for corn syrup, high fructose and sugar content as one of the important ingredients, and meticulously try to avoid them, and go for the good options like whole grains and fiber. It has to be properly cooked before consumption. The fruits have to be peeled before consumption. Also, if you need to take the fruit with the skinned ones, always boil it and consume in the acute post-transplant phase. Try to control the portion control also, and eat small frequent meals to avoid overweight and weight gain. Coming to the fats, go for the good ones. Avocados, salmon, walnuts, and olives can be taken, and avoid the fatty meats, cheese, and fried food. There should be a balance of 4:1 for the omega-6 fatty acids to omega-3 fatty acids. You can increase the omega-3 fatty acids by intake of walnuts, flax seeds, and chia seeds. Mackerels and sardines are also good sources. The vegetable oils are good sources for omega-6. Coming to the salt, the strategies to limit the sodium salt is 1 teaspoon of salt is 2.3 gram of sodium, which is a daily highest limit, beyond which it is not indicated. 20% rule has to be followed. We have this previous speaker who spoke about the labels. So about 20% daily value is considered as high salt. Don't get carried away by the labels like low sodium, but because actually they may not be low sodium. They may have 30% less salt, but they may not be actually low sodium. So always go with the labels. Try to avoid the dining outside because you tend to eat more of salty foods. And if in case still you need to go, avoid the extra, look for the extra salty ones like the cheese, pickles, sauces, and the dressings, and try to avoid them. Go for the good options like fresh ones and the frozen ones. If you need to take the canned food, try to meticulously wash away the extra salt by by washing them away, and go for a good options like dried herbs and spices to add flavor and as a salt substitute. Coming to the potassium, if you don't have a if you have a normal GRAT function, no need to restrict the potassium, but you have a risk of hyperkalemia because of delayed GRAT function or CNI toxicity or cotrimoxazole use. You need to curtail your potassium intake, and you have to avoid the salt substitutes, especially the rock salt, Himalayan salt, pink salt. They are all rich in potassium and need to be curbed. Coming to the phosphorus and calcium, mainly the sources are from the dairy products. Important thing is always use the pasteurized milk, yogurt, which is prepared from the pasteurized milk, which is considered safe. Though it is a probiotic, it is considered safe. There is no increased risk of infection. Go for the hard cheese. Portion control again is important. Fish with bones are good sources of calcium. Coming to the plant products, fortified soy milk and sesame fruits. Brazil nuts and broccoli are good sources of calcium. Coming to the phosphorus, again the good sources are the animal proteins, the dairy products, the bakery products, the chocolate, and eggs and meat and fishes. And the plant sources are mainly the flax seeds and the kidney beans and the nuts. A word on hypophosphatemia, which is more prevalent in the first 3 months because of the secondary hyperparathyroidism and also because of the renal loss and the immunosuppressive medications. So up till 3 months, you need to give supplementation. Beyond 3 months, it is not indicated because of the increased risk of vitamin D deficiency can occur. So in case if it still persists beyond 6 months, need to look into tertiary hyperparathyroidism. Go for the healthy fluid. It should be clean, non-carbonated, and also it should be non-sprinkled. If you need to take a bottled water, ensure that you are still boiling it and cooling it before consumption. Avoid the carbonated drinks and the sugary ones, and limit the alcohol to two drinks per day. Coming to the specific scenarios of weight gain, which is quite detrimental for the graft function and for the patient survival also, go for the high fiber, lean proteins, go for the good beverages, which is unsweetened ones, go for the skimmed milk, and go for portion control. Coming to the physical activity, it is quite important. Both resistance training and weight bearing exercises are quite important. 150 minutes per week is good. You can do a push-ups, squats, household activity, digging and gardening are good exercises. Avoid the contact sports, especially the rugby, football, or boxing should be avoided. A good evidence is coming up which says that by the usage of pre and probiotic, which can be favorably altered to improve the outcomes of transplant. So gut microbiome play a very important role. In this pictorial diagram on the left side, we can see that with the intake of dietary fiber, which is acted upon by the commensal bacteria, there's a formation of short chain fatty acid, which is actually good because they increase the T regulatory cells, which can decrease the risk of transplant rejection and also optimize the glycemic control by increasing the insulin sensitivity. But on the contrast, on the right side, if we can see that with the increased intake of protein and meat, which is acted upon by the commensal bacteria, there's an increased production of carnitine, which can get converted to trimethylamine and further to trimethylamine oxide in the liver, which can have detrimental effects on the cardiovascular health and kidney health. India is a place of diversity, not only in culture but also in food habits. So in the south, where the fermented foods and it is mainly rice-based food. In the north is the chapati and protein, which is actually quite preferred. But whatever the diet may be, it is important to have a balanced one, and we are able to give it with the help of a good nutritionist. Caution for vegetarian transplant: we have to focus on balancing the pulse and cereal complementation to avoid sarcopenia. And for a diabetic individual, it is good to give the high protein food in the breakfast and the dinner time, complementing with the staple diet with a portion control during the lunch time. And for the snacking, it should be the roasted chanas or the seeds can be considered. Word on food safety: it is important to have avoid all the raw eggs, uncooked rice or the meat. Unpasteurized food should be avoided. Meat should be properly cooked. It should be in the oven first and then only in the barbecue to ensure full cooking. Keep the hot foods as hot and cold as far as possible. Try to wash it thoroughly before consumption. Avoid the takeaways. Avoid the salad bars. Avoid the probiotics, especially the kefir and the Yakult, which is freely available, should be avoided. A big no for the grapefruit, pomegranate, Seville oranges, and the star fruit. And for the same reason, the herbal tea also should be avoided because it adversely affects the CNI levels. Pillars of safety are the clean, separate the food to avoid cross-contamination, cook it well, 63 degrees centigrade for 2 hours is considered safe. If you have to chill the food, 0 to 5 degrees centigrade is sufficient, or if you have to freeze it, it is around minus 18 degrees centigrade is sufficient to inhibit the growth of harmful bacteria. So the key takeaways are protein and calorie needs are aggressively high in the acute phase, and but it must be restricted later. It is important to have cardiovascular, weight management and metabolic vigilance from time to time. Monitor the hidden minerals. They have to be monitored from time to time. Food label reading is quite important. Food safety is not negotiable. And last but not the least, it is important that good collaboration with nutritionists is a success for good transplant outcomes. Thank you for patient hearing. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Muthu. Dr. Muthu has discussed all details about nutrition in transplant. All of the people those involved in transplantation, they know that a well-nourished patient always outcome is always better as compared to a malnourished patient before transplant. And after transplant, nutrition and health is influenced by a lot of factors. Immunosuppressive drugs being used for diabetes, intercurrent infection. We should be aware all the time. So not only we monitor the immunosuppression, but we should monitor all the time nutrition status of the patient, not only obesity but biochemistry also. Thank you very much. Open to discussion. Yes, please.
Good morning, ma'am. It was an excellent talk, but I have one doubt. That is hyponatremia in immediate post-transplant scenario. What do you do? I keep on using actually hyponatremia. Hyponatremia in an immediate post-transplant period. Is
much
there any
more
role?
Than hyponatremia, hypophosphatemia, which is very common,
Right, sir. But in hyponatremia, my main concern is, can we, let's say that the patient has good urine output and it is not very high, urine output is not there. Is there a option of going ahead for tolvaptan to improve the sodium?
See, obviously we are more concerned about the fluid part because tolvaptan will be a diuretic drug, so fluid loss would be more concerned. But in case if the patient is stable and we can just combine fluid with a small dose, but not in the acute phase where tolvaptan cannot be given if the sodium is pretty low.
Why should we use it?
No, if they have hypertension, sir. Most of the patients post-transplant sometimes
I
they
just
have.
want to ask you.
No, just to improve sodium, sir, because most of
but there is this mistake is commonly done by the residents in the hospital. You have to know. You should have to know the rationale of using hyponatremia.
We keep on increasing salt.
If there is ADH, something like that.
Sir.
Most of the time, not ADH.
Dietary salt we tend to increase. Dietary salt we tend to increase. They are not used to taking that much of salt. Then what we do is we keep on increasing. Either we advise them to go ahead for normal saline at home at least for a few days to tide over. Sometimes what I do is I add up even sodium bicarbonate to increase the sodium intake. So in spite of it, it is not increasing. If they have hypertension in those scenarios, what is the next step?
Humbly requesting.
No,
to
most
have
of
a
the
brief
times,
discussion.
this is not of the sodium which is causing the problem. It is the water which is causing the problem.
Obviously.
So, what we need to, what is your replacement fluid? So that you should think of. Really, immediate post-transplant. Even after discharging, what happens? Most of the patients go. You ask them to take a lot of waters, and they go on drinking this water at home, and that is causing the dilution.
Dr.
This is not
Narayan,
uncommon
first
to
of
see.
all, they must know that hyponatremia is not a disorder of sodium. It is a disorder of water, So if you feel that the water is in excess, then try to sort out that problem. You cannot, giving sodium and giving hyponat is not the solution actually.
I'm not saying that hyponat should be given, sir. What I'm saying is,
Speak loudly.
can we consider it as a last option if it is not responding to any of the other treatment options?
No, you go to
Should
study
reduce.
every patient and know that what is the cause of hyponatremia.
If
It's
patient
as
is
simple
still
as
having
that.
very good
It's
urine
not a
output,
big
we
problem.
reduce the water intake, still output is very high. In those scenarios, what do we do? Understood.
Whatever you are doing, you are giving water in excess or patient is taking water in excess, So that is how it is happening. But either fluids are being given wrongly,
Understood.
or a patient has got some problem.
Always when we are giving the liquids, actually always give us as a balanced liquids because you should have soups, you should have rice water, you should always have juices where combination of sodium, potassium all are there. So avoid just giving plain liquid only.
Thank you.
Any other question?
Thanking all the speakers.
I will
for
just
the
say
session.
that as a nephrologist, always whether you are treating CKD or transplant is also CKD only for to some extent. Always see blood pressure in all to both physicians. Always record weight on every visit. That is very important. At least once in a month, weight record should be there, And occasionally you should get all these things and watch for biochemical parameter also, something like 3 monthly or 6 monthly. With this, I conclude this session. Thank you all the speakers. You did job, nice job. Thank you, Ranch.